welcome to THAIFEX-Anuga Asia 2022. I'm saying hello to my audience here as well as my audience on Facebook Live on our official page. So there are thousands of people watching right now saying hello from Thailand. And I also learned that there are both Thai audience and international audience on my Facebook Live. Soสวัสดีค่ะทุกท่านเลยนะคะวันนี้เราก็เริ่มต้นเช้าวันใหม่นะคะเป็นวันที่4นะคะยังเป็นวัน business day อยู่ค่ะเดี๋ยวพรุ่งนี้นะคะเราจะเปิดให้ public ได้เข้ามาชมงานค่ะ Today is the 4th day of THAIFEX-Anuga Asia 2022 but we still have tomorrow as the final day which is a public day we will be opening for public to come and enjoy.Into our 19th edition this year, we are bringing to you a special hybrid edition, THAIFEX-Anuga Asia 2022, keeping the unique concept of 11 trade shows under one roof. The show connects the F&B ecosystem within one mega show. Jointly organized by the Department of International Trade Promotion, DITP, the Thai Chamber of Commerce, TCC, and Cohen Messe from Germany.In the hybrid edition of trade show combining both offline and online elements, this 24th to 28th of May. This year trade show combines on-site and virtual elements such as live streaming, virtual business matching, and virtual trade show platforms. This year's tagline is Reimagining the Future of Food.And it is with this in mind that our priority is to focus on inspiring through trends and innovations, but more importantly, connecting you with the right business partners. Alright, we're going to go through the first topic of the day. This is going to be a session of 3 speakers who are going to talk about the future of food tech. Food is now technology.คุณโทนี่ฮันเตอร์ trademark presentation will show you how food technologies are advancing exponentially and how they are dominating and fundamentally changing the industry. Hear from him to prepare your business for the alternative futures and how this understanding on future trajectories can be used to take decisive action to gain a competitive advantage.This session will be followed by a conversation with key players in the industry to explore the technological changes in real life, the imperative for innovation, and where will future technology take us in the next decade. So, not to waste your time, I'm going to invite our first speaker of the day. May I please invite คุณโทนี่ Hunter, food futurist of Future
Cubed.Good morning, everyone. Well, I've titled my presentation here, Reimagining a Global Food System, because as we've just heard, we need to do that in order to keep up with all the technologies that we're seeing here at THAIFEX-Anuga. Now, we're going to have 10 billion people on the planet by 2050. Now, some people will say that that's a problem. I say,we're at a once-in-a-generation crossroads opportunity. And that opportunity is to fundamentally reimagine the global food system. But to do that, we need to address the underlying problem in that there's simply not enough arable land or fresh water on the planet to feed everybody the way that we do in food-rich countries, and particularly countries like the US, Australia, and Europe.So how do we overcome this problem of having enough food to feed 10 billion people by 2050? Well, some people will say that, well, we already grow enough food on the planet. All we need to do is to redistribute that food. We just need to send it where it's needed. And that's basically what the World Resources Institute says here. Basically, if you're eating too much, stop eating too much and send it to other people. Now, what I say is,We've been telling people in Europe, Australia, and the US for decades, don't eat so much food or you will die of lifestyle-related diseases. How's that been working? And now we think we're going to tell people in food-rich countries that please stop eating as much food so we can send it to other people to eat. I simply don't see that working. Now, other people say, well, if we reduce food waste, then that's how we're going to feed the planet. And I think that reducing food waste is a really important component of feeding the planet. Now, my issue is I don't think it's going to happen fast enough, particularly consumer food waste. If we look, for instance, at the UK, self-reported food waste under all their lockdowns and COVID basically dropped dramatically. But as soon as the lockdowns finished in 2021, food waste came back up to 2018 levels. So I think, particularly from a consumer point of view, we're looking at generational change that's going to be required to address food waste. And if we look at that generationally, what that means is education of the food supply chain from farmers, restaurants, supermarkets, consumers, etc., is what's really, really important to get a long-term impact out of reducing food waste. So if I'm saying those couple of things might not work, what's the alternative? Well, my alternative is that we equitably distribute the means of production. So we don't just simply produce food using new technologies in food-rich countries and ship that to countries that are food poor. We equitably distribute the means of production. And that's viable for a lot of these new technologies because they use either very little or no arable land and fresh water. It's also viable for countries that are growing their food system because as they grow their economy and they grow socially, they can actually adopt new technologies. Now, the best example of this is actually from outside the food industry. And that is, believe it or not, telecommunications technology in Kenya. Now, in 2002, Kenya needed to dramatically improve its telecommunications. Did they go out and dig thousands of kilometres of trenches, fill them with copper wires, build exchanges, create a new handset manufacturing industry? Of course not. All they did was to put in some cell towers, make available simple smartphones, and they leapfrogged 100 years, a century of telecommunications technology in a decade. Now, why can't we do that for the food system? I see no reason why we can't apply similar logic to food. And yes, the current food system has been quite successful in feeding a lot of the planet, but it's not without its problems. We have massive resource usage, we have pollution of our waterways, our oceans and our seas, and significant greenhouse gas emissions. So we still need to do something, and these new technologies promise to deliver more food whilst not having the same level of impacts on the planet as conventional agriculture. And yes, some of these new technologies we're going to talk about, they can seem a little bit scary, but you don't want to be like this guy here. It's not that scary. So one thing we have to realise is that the only thing constant is change. And the rate of change is never going to be slower than it is today. And I first noticed this back in 2017, just 5 years ago. I started to notice many, many more articles I was reading on new food technologies. And I started to dig deeper into these technologies. I started following them. And with years of research, I've come to the conclusion that we're at the intersection of 5 exponential technologies, which are accelerated by 3 accelerator exponential technologies. And it's the intersection of these technologies that's going to drive the future of food for decades to come. And many of these technologies don't come from the food industry. They come from medicine, biotech, engineering, and more. So what are these 5 technologies? Well, they are alternative proteins, cellular agriculture, genomics, the microbiome, and synthetic biology. And our 3 accelerated technologies which are driving these exponential technologies are AI, quantum computing, and sensors, all leading to what I call the techsponential food future. Now, some people will say, wait a minute, alternative proteins, cellular agriculture and synthetic biology, aren't they all the same? Well, no, they're not. Cellular agriculture and synthetic biology can produce alternative proteins, but as we'll see, they can do a lot more than that. And secondly, I haven't got conventional agricultural technologies or animal agriculture technologies on my model because whilst they're going to be around for quite a while, they are not going to be the key drivers to the future of food. So my Techsponential future is built on two key ideas. The first key idea is that food is now technology. Technology is everywhere in food. It's no longer just about products and consumers. You need to take into account the technologies that are available and how those technologies are going to affect consumers and products. And a consequence of viewing food as technology is that technologies are exponential. They advance exponentially. And that's critical because we humans are linear creatures. An hour is an hour, a week is a week, a year is a year. And even though we might feel that sometimes time goes faster or slower, it doesn't really. It's all the same. So humans are linear, technology is exponential. And that makes it a difficult concept for humans to follow. So what's the consequence of these two key results? That's food is now technologies advancing exponentially. Food is now Techsponential. And a good example of this in the food industry comes from the alternative protein, or as was called back in 2018, the new meat landscape. Back in 2018, these were virtually all of the companies globally that were making alternative protein products. That's it. That's not even 4 years ago. Sorry, just over 4 years ago. If we fast forward 3 years, that is the same landscape. Now, I've never seen such rapid growth in a new food ecosystem in all my time. We really are seeing exponential growth. And you might ask me, why are you showing me 2021, Tony, and not 2022? Can't fit them all on one landscape in 2022, or if I did, you'd be staring at coloured dots on the screen. That's how fast the industry itself is growing. So what I want to do today is just touch on the three food technologies that are part of my Techsponential model. So that's alternative proteins, cellular agriculture, and synthetic biology. And if we look at our first category of alternative proteins, it used to be nice and easy. Animals, plants. And we let corn from the UK with their mycoprotein, an honorary plant member. But that was easy. But as we'll see, it's no longer nearly as easy just to separate out into animal and plant. We have, for instance, what's called biomass products. Now, anyone been to Australia and tried Vegemite or Marmite from the UK? Not too many takers, but anyway, that is an example of a biomass product where you just take a microorganism, you grow that microorganism like a yeast, and then you harvest the yeast, and then you use that to make a food product, like an alternative protein product. Now, this company called Arbiome, they take waste wood and turn it into food. Because when you want a tree, you only want the trunk. You don't want the branches. You don't want the sawdust. You don't want the bits you cut off when you turn a round log into square rectangular pieces. That's all you want. So what normally happens to that product? Often it's burned and not good for greenhouse gas emissions. What our biome can do is to turn that wood waste into media for growing microorganisms, which can then be treated and textured to make alternative protein products. And then we have fungi. Now, fungi, mycoprotein, one of the biggest movers in the space at the moment in alternative proteins. And this one is from a company called Nature's Find. Now, they find this in the bottom of the hot springs of Yellowstone National Park, the fumaroles, down the bottom of the hot springs. They found a fungi that would grow under those conditions. And what they've done is they've grown that organism and then they've harvested that and they're using that to make everything from cream cheese to breakfast patties. And one of the latest ones we have coming out is leaf protein. Now, there's a lot of green material from growing crops that really don't do anything with, or it's a low value material. What you can now do is to take those leaves, extract the key protein for photosynthesis called rubisco, and then use that to produce alternative protein products for making food. Now, we eat green stuff, but we can't access a lot of the rubisco because it's locked up in the plant cells. But these people can release that. And then we look at hybrid products. And if we have a look at the hybrid products, this is a hybrid of algae and conventional seafood. Ocean mortadella from a company called Newfish in New Zealand. And if we move on to cellular agriculture, most people will think, say, of cultivated meat, clean meat, cultured meat, call it what you will. And yes, that's part of cellular agriculture. And one of the ways that you can make these products is to grow the cells, take the cells from animal, grow them in huge fermenters, and then you structure those cells to make things like hamburgers and sausages and things like that. And the best example of that is actually a local regional example, which is, of course, chicken nuggets in Singapore from Eat Just. Been legal to sell that product to the general public since December 2020. And we also have other cultivated meat companies or cultivated seafood companies like Shock Meats from Singapore, and they make seafood products like crab and lobster. But you don't just have to make unstructured products like sausages and hamburgers. You can actually grow whole cut products. Now, this is a steak that was made by a company called Aleph Farms in Israel. And you might look at that and go, it doesn't really look exactly like a steak. Completely agree with you. But take a step backwards. This is a prototype product. So imagine, with exponential growth, what this will look like in 5 years, 10 years, or even 3 years' time. Then you've got something that looks a lot like a steak. And then we have something called mammary gland agriculture. As you can see, cellular agriculture is not just about meat. What you can do here is take stem cells from milk, you grow mammary glands in fermenters, and you can grow milk without the animal. And you can do that for any mammal, including humans. So imagine what that could do to the infant formula industry that derives all its product from the dairy industry and the impacts on the dairy industry. And just to show you again, it's not all about animals. This is plant cellular agriculture, a company called California Cultured. They are taking cells from the cacao plant, growing those in fermenters and extracting chocolate components like flavonols and fat to make chocolate. And if we go to our last technology of synthetic biology, and this is basically where you take the gene for something you want to make in nature, you put it into another living organism, you grow that organism, harvest what you want, and then you use that product. And the best example, of that is, believe it or not, cheese. Who here likes cheese? Who like cheese? Yeah, no, plenty of cheese takers. Right, okay. So when you make cheese originally, you use something called rennet. And rennet was made from the fourth stomach of a 2-day-old dead calf. So back in the 80s, cheese consumption was rising rapidly, and they realised there's not going to be enough rennet or dead calves around to make enough cheese. So what are we going to do? So our friends at Pfizer, who make our vaccines, inserted the gene for the enzyme in rennet called chymosin, and they put that into a microorganism and made chymosin. And now that chymosin is what's used to manufacture cheese. And they did that in 1990. So they produced animal-free chymosin. So 80 to 90% of all hard cheeses in the world are made using animal-free chymosin, or fermentation-produced chymosin as they call it, and has been for the last 32 years. So if you've eaten hard cheese, you've eaten a food made with a product of a genetically modified organism. So who's now going to stop eating cheese because I've told them that? Any takers? Nope. I haven't had one taker in that. So just remember that one though. If we look more recently, we have a company called Perfect Day. They're making animal-free whey protein, using it in everything from ice creams, cream cheese, and even to make animal-free milk containing animal-identical whey protein. So is it animal-free or is it not animal-free? Because the whey protein, identical, but it's never been near an animal. Is it vegan? Interesting philosophical question, one that I don't want to get involved in answering, but an interesting question to think about. And the last one is plant molecular farming. What you do here is you put the gene for the compound you want into a plant, you grow the plant, you then harvest the seeds, extract what you want from the seeds, and then process the rest of the plant. And a company called Orf Genetics in Iceland is doing that to make the growth factors you require for growing cultivated meat. And they reckon that they have reduced the cost of that product by over 100 times compared to conventional methods of making that product. And the other one we've got, my favourite one here, is Nobel Foods. Now they've put the gene for casein into soybeans, growing the soybeans, taking the casein out and making cheese from casein from soybeans. They've planted the first crop this year. They raised $100 million US. There'll be products released at the end of this year. And if that's successful, next year they'll be growing lots and lots more casein-containing soybeans. And if you look at all these technologies are science fact. They're not science fiction. So we have to realise that the future is actually already here. We just haven't heard about a lot of it. And what do all these technologies, though, have in common? And why are they important to reimagining the global food system? That's because they use a lot less natural resources. They use little or no fresh water or arable land in order to manufacture the products. But what do consumers think of this technology in their food? Because it doesn't matter how good your technology is, if the consumers won't buy it, you don't have anything. So I think there's a couple of interesting points here. It shows which direction this is going to take. One is my informal survey, which I did here again today, saying to people, are you going to stop eating cheese because it's made with the product of a genetically modified organism? I've asked thousands of people. Not one has said yes. Not one's going to stop. So if people see a benefit in a technology, they're likely to accept that in their food with far more likely than not. And maybe the benefit of cheese is you love cheese, but that is still a benefit. And the other signal of the direction it's going to take is the fact that Gen Z and particularly Gen Alpha, because when we look at the 2030, 2040, Gen Zs are getting a bit old by then, so it's going to be their kids, Gen Alphas, that are going to drive the future of food. They are not just digital natives, which we hear all the time. They are technology natives. So they've grown up with private companies shooting rockets into space. Spot, the dancing dynamic Boston Dynamics robot, who, if you go to Singapore, apparently will tell you to start social distancing and not be so close to each other. And electric cars, internet, streaming, mobile phones, you name it, they don't know any other reality. And so research has shown that Gen Zs and Gen Alphas are far more likely to accept a high level of technology used to make their food than any previous generations. And I think that's particularly important in this region, because when we look at mid-2030 to late 2030, what we're going to see is that the largest cohort of Gen Z and Gen Alpha on the face of the planet is going to be in Asia. So what I say is, as goes Asia, so goes the rest of the world. But what will the future look like for these consumers? So it might look a little bit like this. This is a video from a concept restaurant called Sushi Singularity in Tokyo. So in just 77 seconds, we're going to see how this could play out in real life. So Walter Davis goes to Sushi Singularity for a meal. As he enters the restaurant, facial recognition software identifies him. The restaurant AI downloads his nutritional data from Walter's personal quantum-powered AI. He's greeted personally. He then orders his food. The nutritional data is then sent to the 3D printer, which selects ingredients from cellular agriculture, conventional agriculture, and synthetic biology, and it 3D prints a personalised product for him. And then that product is served with a flourish. Now, this simple scenario brings together our three food technologies: alternative proteins, cellular agriculture, and synthetic biology, merges it with genomics, the microbiome, and AI. He tries the product, and of course, it's delicious. And the thing is, this scenario is built on extensions of technologies that exist today. So by 2050, or even before, this could play out seamlessly in everyday life. So, where are all these technologies leading us? And that we just have to look at 10 billion people. So how are we going to feed those people? So the thing is that we are going to need to scale up our alternative protein technologies. And that is going to take time, because we tend to overestimate how quickly change will happen, but we do underestimate the amount of change that will happen. So we need time, and I think that's going to take decades to scale up the raw materials, the ingredients, and the manufacturing capacity to actually meet the demands of 10 billion people. And that's why conventional animal agriculture is not going anywhere for quite a while. But the bright side of all of these technologies is this is the most exciting time to be in the food industry I have seen in over 30 years. And one thing that's certain, it's only going to get more and more exciting. I can also assure you that we barely scratched the surface today of the new technologies that are driving the future of food. So going back now to our crossroads opportunity. We can reimagine the global food system. We have the technologies sustainably and equitably feed people in 2050. But what we need to do with our new technologies is to make sure that we equitably distribute the means of production, not just the food output. And by combining our new technologies with conventional technologies, we can create a whole new sustainable and equitable global food system. It can be done. 10 billion opportunities from 10 billion people. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And just if you'd like to connect with me, there's a QR code there. If you take that QR code, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll just give you a few seconds to do that one. And then also, please come and see me afterwards if you don't get the QR code. And that's my consulting website. There's a whole raft of information on the future of food on that website and my dedicated speaking website. Thank you.
Thank you, Kun Tony. Would you please take a few minutes rest as we set up tables on stage? Please don't go anywhere yet because he would still be with us, but with two speakers as guests as well. So it's like a panel discussion. นะคะเดี๋ยวเราจะเซตโต๊ะก่อนนะคะเดี๋ยวจะมีการพูดคุยกันต่อค่ะโดยเรามีแขกรับเชิญอีก2ท่านมาร่วมบทสนทนานะคะบนเวทีแห่งนี้ค่ะ Actually คุณ Tony Hunter he also provides technology advice to KFC and Pepsi as well. So Kun Tony, my father actually used to work for Pepsi in the US. So maybe you guys have met at certain point in life. Who knows? เพิ่นคุณพ่อเคยทำงานที่ Pepsi อเมริกานะคะจริงๆทั้งสองท่านอาจจะเคยได้ร่วมงานกันช่วงหนึ่งของชีวิตก็เป็นไปได้ค่ะเรายังอยู่ในช่วงของเซสชั่นแรกนะคะ The Future of Food Tech ค่ะอีกสักครู่หนึ่งนะคะก็จะมีการเชิญแขกสปีกเกอร์นะคะ Guest Speaker อีก2ท่านขึ้นมาบนเวทีค่ะเพื่อร่วมเสวนานะคะ3ท่านจะพูดคุยกันแล้วก็ พูดถึงเรื่อง Food Technology ไปพร้อมๆกันเลยค่ะ May please invite back on stage คุณ Tony Hunter Food Futurist of Future Cubed as a moderator so คุณ Tony would you please come back on stage as moderator ขอเสียงปรบมือด้วยค่ะคุณ Tony just one second you provide food technology advice for Pepsi and KFC as well,
yes,
right?
That's correct, yes.
That's really cool. That's really cool. My dad used to work for Pepsi in the US.
Right.
So probably at some point in life, you and my father probably have met.
You never know, do
Never
you?
Never know.
Never, because you never know the future, so you can't tell.
Right. Thank you for
Thank you.
being here, sir.
Thank you.
แล้วก็ขอเรียนเชิญค่ะ ดร. ละลนาธีระนุสรกิจ SVP Head of Innovation and New Product Development CPF Thailand สวัสดีค่ะสวัสดีค่ะ และอีกท่านหนึ่งนะคะขอเรียนเชิญค่ะ ดร. เอกอนงค์จางบัว Department Director of Food Innopolis ขอเรียนเชิญค่ะ Sir I'll hand over my stage to you
Thank you. Well, welcome to the panel, Dr. Lalana, Dr. Akeanong.
Hi, Tony.
I think an exciting time to be in the food industry, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So what do you think, for you guys, is the most exciting part of being involved in the food industry at the moment?
Yeah, so Tony, thank you very much for your overview of the future of food. And I think it's really exciting because there's a lot happening and also the technology is progressing really fast. And I think that the things that are exciting is that the new technologies are coming in to solve the problems that we are having. You know, for example, with the increasing population, with the healthy lifestyles that people need, and with the COVID situation, so people want to build their immunity, and also with the limited resources, with the aging population as well. So with all these problems, technology is coming into play to solve these problems. And I think with the technology that's coming in, it's not only food technology, as you said, right? It's a combination of other technologies as well. For example, AI, biotechnology, cellular technology. So actually now in the world of food technology, it's not only food technology that you mix a certain amount of ingredients, just having the minimal technologies, for example, pasteurization, UHT or whatever. It's more than that. And I think a lot of startups and a lot of, world leaders, corporates are bringing those technologies to help supply the food products for the future requirements. So I think that's really interesting and it's going to move really fast. So I think in 10 years' time, even 10 years' time, we will see different types of food that we are eating today. Maybe in the same format, but the way that it's made.
So we need to come back in THAIFEX-Anuga 2032
yes.
and see what's changed.
That's right.
I think that's really good segue, Dr. Akeanong, because one of the things that needs to happen, I think, is if governments don't get behind development of new technologies, then we're not going to address these problems. They need to be a facilitator, not a block to new technologies.
Yeah, so I'll come back to the government part later, but you asked first what are we exciting about food technology or food industry nowadays. Well, I think during like two years during the pandemic, I myself get exciting. What are we eating? And then also the changing behavior of the consumer. That is the key driver for what we are seeing today for the moving with the exponential rate, as you mentioned, of the food business. So what we eat today and what is also exciting, and I'm curious to know what are we going to eat in the new decade. When we are in 2030, when we are saying that we will have more and more aging population, what are those people would eat? By that years, I would be also part of that population. So I wonder what food I would be eating. And also I want to age with a healthy human being. So I don't want to get ill. So what I need to prepare myself, so that's to me, that is also exciting. And also another thing is that I start to see countries in Asia using a lot of their local ingredients to produce food that meet the need of the consumer. For example, in Thailand, we have a lot of variety of local ingredients, local food ingredients that good for the health benefits. So that's also the exciting in research and development world. That how could we use all these local ingredients? How could we feed the world with what we have now? And I'll go back to your points about the government. So because Food Innopolis is a government initiative to be the innovation platform for food industry. So with this kind of changing, the pace of changing technologies in food business, we cannot sit back. So we have to support food tech startup in particular for them to come up with new or innovative technologies and help them to work with larger company or get them to meet the investor or the strategic partner in the future so that they could help come up with very interesting and innovative food products.
So I think you touched on a few really good points there, Dr. Akeanong. I mean, I think the concept of health span rather than lifespan. There's no point in living to 100 if your last 30 years you're not healthy and all you're doing is waiting to die, basically. Whereas having that health span with some of the functional ingredients, are you seeing that in industry, Dr. Lalana?
Yes, we see that as well. So for the elderly population, we are also looking into that because we want our consumers to age happily, right? And also healthily as well. So the elderly people, they need to eat nutritious food, and when they age they can only eat a small amount. So in that small amount that they will consume, it has to be full of nutrients, and those nutrients must be able to prevent them from getting diseases, also to revive them so that they are healthy and can age happily. So there's a lot to do in the elderly food space, and also people who are aged, they have trouble swallowing, so dysphagia, they have other symptoms, for example, Alzheimer's and everything like that. So how do we provide them with the right nutrition so that they can prolong those symptoms and even get over those symptoms as well. So I think with the elderly food, it's a big space, and also in Asia, we are already approaching the elderly population. So yes, the industry has to address that.
Because I think you've almost got two polar opposite consumers. You've got the very young, the Gen Alphas and the Gen Zs, but then you've got the elderly population, the boomers and beyond, who are demanding slightly different things and who are comfortable with different levels of technology in their food. So it's going to be interesting to see how industry copes with it. And are you seeing any, Dr. Akeanong, any particular range of startups coming to you or taking your attention?
Well, we at Food Innopolis, we run accelerator for food tech startup as well. I see a lot of them working on, part of it is, of course, alternative proteins. And the others, or I would say majority, would be functional food, functional ingredients. Not only the startup that in our accelerators, but the SMEs that we are working with. the key challenge is to come up with the food that meet the needs of the consumers. And the consumer is the nowadays when we talk about functional ingredients, functional food, and the demand of the consumers, they're not eating just for health benefit or physical health, but we start to see a lot of food that's good for mind as well. So we start to see food that help people that maybe get when they get depressed, what they would eat. Why they get depressed? Because in these past 2 years, they in the stage of something that they don't expect before. So functional food, functional ingredients, I think it's come along with alternative protein, plant-based. We will start to see a lot of that. And that is the challenge, because when you put all these ingredients into your food and you want to claim the health benefits, it's a lot more to invest along the chain before the product get to the market and you can claim that. So that's also the things that food industry have to, in terms of investment, they have to put a lot on this.
I think that's right. That's sort of what I'm seeing on a global basis, is that people used to eat for good tasting fuel, and now they want to eat what I call it personalised wellness. And wellness meaning not just my body, but my cognitive health, my emotional health, I'm sleeping properly, I'm getting everything. So people are not content anymore with just having, it tastes good and it's calories. It's like, well, no, what's it going to do for me? Well, how's it going to help me in my life, rather than just, gee, it tastes good and that's it.
Yeah, so it's more like functional food, right? So food to address specific symptoms. And going back to the elderly before that you asked, I think the availability of localized food for the elderly, it's still very minimal, because like especially in Thailand and in Asia, we have our special localized taste, right? Yeah. And if you have like elderly food that is maybe from Western origin, the Thai elderly people may not be used to that taste, and so they don't feel happy to eat it. So then they become, lacking the nutrition because they can't eat their normal food, but they also can't eat the foods that are coming from Western origin. So I think that's a problem that needs to be addressed as well. So having localized elderly food for Thailand and also for the Asian market as well.
Yeah, because I mean, the elderly people, they've basically culturally grown up with a certain flavours and certain way of eating that they're comfortable with, and that's what they want to continue with if they can. And simply going to serve them a hamburger, no matter how good it is for them, is really not going to do it, is it? You need to localise it by that. And that's why I think it's so wonderful. I say, when I first came to THAIFEX-Anuga back in 2019, the dim dark days before COVID, I was so impressed with the startup culture in Thailand. I think it's phenomenal, and I think anyone from Australia, etc., who doesn't come and see THAIFEX-Anuga is absolutely mad. They need to come and see what's going on in the region. It's such a vibrant food industry and startup culture here in Thailand. And I think that ability to localise for the Asian markets is very, very important part of what we're doing. And from what I see, I don't see that Thailand or Asia are followers anymore. They're starting to take the lead in what's going on. I mean, you've got your Meat Zero products taking the lead in what's going on in the region. We've got the people I mentioned like Shiok and Celex, all these sorts of people who are driving local innovation in the space. Talking about that, how are you seeing the investment space at the moment for startups? Is there a lot of money around? Is startup harder to get? What's the situation there in the region?
Well, I might take this first. Well, as I mentioned, I'm working with this food tech startup, and we are government accelerator. So we help them, we coach them, we mentor them. I would say in terms of availability of the money for them in the market, there are a lot. But the challenge for us as a government to groom them is how could we dress them up to be ready for those money available? So that's the challenge.
Yeah, because a lot of the times the startup people running startups have very little business experience, and they're great ideas and maybe great scientists, but trying to get a team together that appeals to investors, that will show that their money is going to grow the company and not just make something that somebody loves but has no commercial benefit.
We got good people, we got good scientists, we got good team in Thailand. But we just need to, like as you mentioned, make them appeal to investor, and not only the investor in Thailand as well. We have done one cohort of accelerators, and those that graduate from our accelerators also get interest from the Singapore accelerator as well. So we send them further to Singapore, because what we do, since we are government, so we doing very early stage of food tech startup, and then after they finish from us, they could go to others accelerator as well.
Because that's what I'm seeing, is that, if you've got a good idea, I'm seeing companies from the States invest in Singapore and Thailand companies in Singapore investing in Australia. If you've got a good idea and you present it correctly, as you say, then you can get funding from somewhere, but you've got to get it right. Dr. Lalana?
Yeah, so Tony, I'm really fond of the startup space, especially in Thailand and also globally as well. And I've been really amazed within the last 5 years. There's been so much food tech investments. And before that, you never heard of food tech investments before. It's more like telecommunications, robotics or whatever. But now, within the last 5 years, there's been so many food tech investments. And last year alone, 2021, I think there's been about 40 million US dollars, right, in 40 billion actually US dollars in the food tech space investment. So that's a huge amount considering maybe 10 years ago there would be hardly any food tech investments. And there's several categories for the food tech investments. For example, ingredients, right? In the food waste, in traceability, in restaurant tech as well, and in personalized nutrition. But the biggest space probably would be in alternative proteins, as you mentioned before, and also in e-commerce and distribution as well. So it's actually really spread out throughout the food industry for the food tech investments. And I think what the VCs are looking for is IP and the ability to scale and how big the market is. And also, is it a crowded space already? So I think, these particular points are really important. Apart from, if you can attract the VCs, if there's white space, I think IP is important. If you've got something that you can protect and be able to scale.
Because as you say, we've seen such a huge increase. Go back to those couple of landscapes. And huge increase in the number of companies around, and I struggle with some of these companies to see what's different about company A and company Z and company G in between. Like, what is different about these companies? Is it getting more and more difficult to find a unique point of difference in the marketplace, in the startups?
Yes, when we work with startup in our accelerators, we try to make them think of not the local market or the regional market. You have to solve the problem of the bigger markets, and that means they have to be unique. So you cannot be the solutions for everyone, but you have to be one solution that's that person cannot live without your solution. So that's what they have to find their uniqueness. That's that challenging. And also, I think for me, working with early stage startup, it's kind of a challenge for accelerator as well to change their mind because they are more like researchers turned entrepreneurs. So we have to equip them with different lens of how they view the world.
Yeah.
So that's also we want to teach them not to fall in love with their own baby. Then they will find the uniqueness.
Yes, because once you fall in love with your baby, you keep going no matter whether it's ugly or not.
So actually adding to that, I think team composition is really important. Okay, in a startup, you need someone really strong in the science and technology, but you also need someone in marketing. You also need someone in management. So to form a complete team, you need various expertise, not just scientists who can do, great in the lab, but don't know how to sell their products. So I think team composition is really important for startups.
And I think the other thing I look for when I'm looking at startups and saying, will this technology take off, is I look for when a startup teams up with a major player. So like our example, Perfect Day.
Yeah.
They were just going along and then they teamed up with ADM, $62 billion US ingredients company that had all the things the startup didn't. Sales, marketing, production expertise, everything else. And they've gone on from there to raise $750 million US dollars. I figure they've got over the scale-up valley of death there. I think they're probably on a bit of a winner.
Yeah, so that's why corporates are teaming up with startups because we have to complement each other. Like corporates, for example, like CP, we have the distribution, we have the marketing arm, but as the news has been released, we teamed up with Future Meats.
Yep.
They've got the technology, and we also have the technology, but in the plant-based area. So with the cell-based and the plant-based, we can make hybrid products. So it's bringing the strength of both worlds, right? Bringing the strength of both companies together and launching it into the market. So I think when you partner up with a startup, you just have to see how we can become strategic partners and help each other along so that you can make that mission possible. Yeah,
I think that's right, because if you're both got exactly the same set of skills,
that's right.
it really doesn't make much difference, does
It's
it?
not complementing.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to save my last question until the very, very end, which is going to be, give you time to think about it, stare into your crystal ball and tell me what 2032 is going to look like. So I'm not going to ask you now, we're going to go to the audience. Do we have any questions from the audience for our panel? Do we have a microphone? Any questions from the audience for our panel? No. A little bit shy at the moment. Well, I'll go to one that I had. We mentioned the use of AI in startups and so on, and in food, and that was one of my accelerator technologies. Are you guys seeing a lot of use of AI coming through in either in startups or in companies you're dealing with?
Yeah, for AI, it's a lot on prediction, flavor prediction, trend prediction, and also in formulation as well, right? And also in quality control. So a lot of AI is being used in those areas. I think that's really good because it helps corporates like us predict the future, predict what raw materials we should use. So technology is really helpful, and it saves us time as well, right? With the AI prediction, and there's more accuracy.
Yeah. And I think
than just guessing, I suppose.
And I think the thing is with AI, it can consider a number of formulations the human brain can't even conceive of. My favourite one is Notco, who make plant-based milk. They put cabbage and banana flavours into the milk because the AI told them there were some components in there. And that might sound funny, but how many times, maybe if you tune into a wine channel, it smells of apricots with some fruit salad. So we use those descriptors for wine. Why not for milk? Milk may have a slight cabbage odour that we don't pick up, but the AI thinks it does.
Yeah.
So I think that's, that sort of ability to, as you say, Dr. Lalana, to predict what will happen and consider things the human brain can't even do in a decade.
That's right.
And Dr. Akeanong, are you seeing any one of your startups who are bringing any AI to the table, or?
Not much, but we'll start to see some of that. And using all those data-driven technologies to work with. We have one of them here to doing the sensory evaluation.
Yep.
And not much in terms of very innovative technology, but yes, we start to see those. We start to see one of them trying to use AI technologies to work in the areas of functional food, functional ingredients as well, but it's still at the proof of concept.
One of the things that I mentioned was some of these new technologies, they don't need arable land or fresh water, so countries that don't have a lot of that can actually grow a lot of their own food. Do you think that localisation of production is going to help, particularly when we think about the Ukraine crisis, the price of wheat doubling from something that's literally around the other side of the world? So do you think that our ability to maybe localise some of our food ingredients might be an advantage?
Yeah, I see that coming because especially with the problems that we face with the war and also with COVID, it's getting more and more difficult to rely on imports and exports, right? So people have to rely on their local sources more because, for example, if you're importing the supply, recently, I think yesterday or something, Malaysia, they announced that they're going to ban the export of chicken to Singapore. And poor Singapore, I think Singapore, they rely on 30-something% of their chicken supply from Malaysia.
Yeah.
So I think Singapore have to start thinking of, how can they rely on their local food resources, and it could happen to us. It could happen to any other country as well. So
yeah, I've heard that Israel apparently gets 30% of its eggs from the Ukraine.
Oh, okay.
They're not getting 30% of their eggs anymore in Israel because of a war in Ukraine. So just this whole business of that we're going to feed the world by shipping products all around the planet, I think we've seen under COVID, and particularly the Ukraine crisis has focused on one part of the system. We're seeing the cracks. The global food system is great when everything works perfectly.
Yes.
When you see a problem, the ability of the system to react is not very good at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree on that because I think to a certain extent we have to be reliant on ourselves, right? And then, okay, for the luxury of, having other Western food or whatever, then that can be additional. But for the main food that we are consuming, we should really rely on our regional ingredients and products. Yeah,
I think that makes a lot of sense. Dr. Akeanong, what are you seeing in the startups that are coming to you? Is there any particular category that seems to be getting more popular in the startups that are coming to you?
Do you mean product?
Yeah, product-wise, or
I would say as I mentioned earlier, the alternative protein, functional food, functional ingredients, they're mainstream in our accelerators now, and not much on in terms of processing technologies. So we see more on the product side of it.
And is it so you do very early stage investing, and then you look to then pass those investment-ready companies to VCs or to other accelerators?
The one I'm taking into my accelerator is technology readiness level or TIL only like 5 or 6. And then we're trying to help them to meet the potential partner that can take them further. So it's quite early. So if you look in Thailand food innovation ecosystem, we don't see much of the people or the government or private sectors helping early stage startups. So I think we'll fill that gap, and then we get them ready for the next round.
Because that's the highest risk, isn't it? The very, very early stage, and the government can take that risk if it's got the risk appetite to do that. And I think that's a terrific way of doing things because...
if you have time after this, we have like 10 of them over here.
Oh, yes. I had a little bit of a look around yesterday and was impressed with all the companies I saw.
Yesterday was another 10. This is the new 10.
New 10. Okay, definitely.
We have 6 days. For first 3 days and first 10 and then another 10.
Definitely.
And they, I may take this for the PR and marketing for them. They do the pitching as well. It's on the website of, I think it's on the webpage of THAIFEX-Anuga. So you can
great.
catch them up
Definitely
there.
going to go and have a look because there's some fascinating companies around, that's for sure. So we're down to our last few minutes, so I've given you time to think about what THAIFEX-Anuga 2032 will look like. Who would like to be first cab off the rank?
I think I could find some of the 3D printing, just like Nespresso. And I think that would come maybe like 5 years, maybe less than 10 years. I could maybe purchase it on a THAIFEX.
So you think
And that would be like home appliance.
Oh, you were going to say, so you think of home appliances, 3D printed home appliances. And do you think that, and that will obviously be personalised for people, so it'll take their functional, just like our friend, Walter Davis, he'll have his AI there
Instead
telling
of
what to do.
buying Nespresso machine, it would call, well, I don't know, something machine. Food presso or something.
Patent the name and get the domain name for that one straight away. Okay, as soon as you leave, go get that
And
one.
I can print food for elderly people. I can print edible insect protein in that machine. So it has to be very multifunction.
Very
so that
flexible.
I can print my own food with
very-
full of nutrients.
And of course, that's a great opportunity for CPF to supply the ingredients to your 3D printer to print your food.
Yeah. So actually, my idea is quite similar to Dr. Akeanong. I was going to say personalized food, right? Because everyone has different health conditions, different requirements. So in the future, you may be able to enter your health profile and then let the machine or whatever AI predicts what type of food you should eat in each daily meal, and then have that, supplied, delivered. Because within 10 years, right, convenience I think is king.
Yeah.
Convenience, quality, and also food for personalized health, and also NCDs. So these, I think, would be, the top trends for the next 10 years.
Absolutely. I think that personalised wellness,
Yeah.
because we are all so different how we react to food, that we need something that's personalised for us. How many people have had a diet recommended to them by their friend? I lost 5 kilos, I feel great. You try it, you put on 5 kilos, you've never been more depressed in your life.
That's right.
That's because we are all so dramatically different in the way that we process our food and get our nutrition. So I think that's a really good end point, if you like, for thinking about how all these new technologies will come together. Because if we don't have some sort of framework as to how the technology would come together, then it's the old one, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there.
Yeah.
So if we know that we're going towards a future where personalised wellness, where food for us as individuals is the most important thing, then 3D printing, personalised wellness, I think that's probably the spot at which we should finish. I think we're going to get much better than that. So, ladies and gentlemen, please thank Dr. Lalana and Dr. Akeanong for their time. Thank you.
สวัสดีค่ะ
Thank you very much, our speakers, for great session. I think we learned a lot, but please stay on stage as we have souvenir presentation for you. On behalf of THAIFEX-Anuga Asia 2022, we would like to express gratitude by presenting you souvenir. So please rise up. ขอทั้ง3ท่านยืนขึ้นนะคะ as we would present souvenir by representative of Coin Messe Assistant Project Sales Manager คุณปนัสสรสุขันธรัตน์ค่ะขอเสียงปรบมือด้วยค่ะ First souvenir to คุณ Tony Hunter Food Futurist of Future Cubed He's giving advice to company like Pepsi and KFCเรียนเชิญท่านต่อมานะคะ ดร. ละลนา ธีระนุสรณ์กิจ SVP Head of Innovation and New Product Development CPF Thailand ขอบพระคุณดร. ละลนามากๆค่ะสำหรับเวลาในวันนี้นะคะ และอีกท่านหนึ่งค่ะขอเรียนเชิญดร. เอกอนงค์ จางบัว Department Director of Food Innopolisขอบคุณที่มาแชร์ประสบการณ์นะคะแล้วก็ความรู้ค่ะขอบพระคุณค่ะCan we have another photo of everyone together? Thank you very much. So pleased to have you guys on stage. It's been a wonderful session. This is the first session of today, day 4 of THAIFEX-Anuga Asia 2022 on the future of food tech. Let's see what would happen in 2032.Like you said, 10 years from now, let's see. ขอบพระคุณค่ะ ขอบคุณค่ะ ขอบคุณทุกท่านมากๆเลยนะคะ แล้วเดี๋ยวเราจะกลับมาพบกันนะคะบน Facebook Live อีก 30 นาทีค่ะ My Facebook Live would be back in 30 minutes. First session is over.But I'll be back on Facebook Live, so please stay tuned and I'll see you in 30 minutes. เดี๋ยวเราเจอกันอีกครั้งนะคะ